Put the pace! حط الريتم في اللعب والعب للأمام. They won't give you anything. ما حيعطيكم أي شيء. The best option is for them.
I hope you're still enjoying the World Cup. I know I am. And I've got a little bit of a guilty secret to confess to you. Today, I found myself watching and rooting for Saudi Arabia. Now, generally, I'm against Saudi Arabia. I have been found protesting outside the Saudi Arabian embassy, and I'm against so much of what Saudi Arabia stand for. I'm against the fact that they're called Saudi Arabia, that they're named after a family that the British imperialists teamed up with to rule the Arabian Peninsula. So I'm completely against Saudi Arabia, the state, and I hope that won't offend any Saudi friends that I have watching this. Proud Saudis, I understand it. If you're patriotic, you're proud of who you are, but that country, that state, what it's doing in the world now and what it's been responsible for in the past, I'm generally against that. But I found myself rooting for the underdog, the team that did over Argentina unexpectedly, now with a chance to make it through to the second round of the World Cup. And unfortunately today, they couldn't beat Poland. They lost 2-0. But there I was, rooting for Saudi Arabia. And this felt very strange. But can sport be removed from politics? Or can politics be removed from sport? And am I a hypocrite to be cheering for Saudi Arabia? Some people would say I'm a hypocrite for watching the World Cup in Qatar, and it's another country that I might be critical of. But just because Saudi Arabia is a country in the Middle East created by Britain, does that mean that we shouldn't support them? Does that mean that we should boycott them? There are calls to boycott some countries in the Middle East. I have attended marches and picketed at protests against those countries. There was a World Cup qualifier in Cardiff a few years ago. I think it was in 2015. And there were calls to expel that team from UEFA or from FIFA. They're not a European team, but they qualify in Europe because none of the teams in Asia, certainly none of the Arab teams, would want to play them. And I was there calling for people to boycott this team. Am I a hypocrite to now support Saudi Arabia? Would you be a hypocrite? Are you a hypocrite? Are you one of these people that has interpreted the negativity from, say, the BBC towards Qatar and kind of interpreted it as a kind of Islamophobic reaction and saying this wasn't the case when it was in Russia, even though Russophobia is even bigger than Islamophobia in recent years, isn't it? Russia aren't even in the World Cup because of the stance against Russia. If the world was so Islamophobic, surely there wouldn't be a World Cup in a Muslim country. But are you one of these people that is interpreting it as an Islamophobic reaction, Islamophobic negativity? Is that why the BBC didn't show the opening ceremony? Instead, they spattered off for half an hour about how bad human rights is in Qatar, even though the next World Cup is in America and their human rights record isn't exactly great. They prop up a lot of dictators that are very, very lacking in the human rights department. And finally, I want to mention Iran again, because I thought this was an example of where you could remove the state from the football team. And the fact that Iran didn't sing the national anthem, but then they did this time, kind of puts into question the whole stance of the Iranian football team. And I've got a good friend of mine who is a very proud Iranian, not nationalistic, but patriotic, and very much against the regime, regards the regime as despotic, tyrannical, and would be standing with the women's protest in Iran. And I mentioned the World Cup to him, like who you're supporting. He's born in England, Iranian origin, and he's like, "Oh, I'm not supporting Iran. Oh, I can't stand them. They're evil." So he's very much interpreted the government and the state and the regime as being synonymous with the football team. Whereas I thought maybe that wasn't the case. And if that wasn't the case, why was I standing calling for a team to be chucked out of UEFA or to be chucked out of FIFA if the football team and the players are not representative of the state? Am I a hypocrite? Or are some things just bigger than football? Are some issues just so pressing that we have to make a stand and boycotting is the only way?